All right, we are back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I will be covering the Black Friday football game. And Bears Eagles, no real, report out right now on viewership, but it'd be interesting to see just how many people globally tuned into that. Definitely a stacked day of sports overall, and this was the biggest draw, you could argue. Aside from maybe some of the NBA action, of course. Like, a fair amount of people worldwide definitely got their fair share of whichever sport or sports they may prefer. But when it came time for 3 o'clock, this Bears-Eagles game was going to be the one showcased to everyone around the world. Keep in mind that this was some of the first football that a few fans have gotten to watch on their own time. And man, did the script get flipped completely. That's what this entire game really came down to. Like, the Bears could not be stopped toting the fucking ball on the ground. They couldn't be stopped. They could not be stopped, bro. I mean, they didn't even need Caleb Williams to throw the ball. All they had to do was rely on both Kyle Monangai, who has emerged into a sort of bot committee back for the team, and they also changed up the pace with Swift on numerous occasions, and he actually had a tremendous game in this one on the rushing side of things. Truly. Like, everything was just clicking for that Bears offense when they stuck to putting the ball on the ground and trusting in their running backs. That's where this really came down to. I mean, already they had managed to establish enough of a rushing attack to where they were already on the defensive side, the Eagles, giving up some major milestones on their front. And it wasn't just the runs, because Monangai and Swift were definitely cutting up all over the place, don't get me wrong. It got so crazy so quickly that even Saquon Barkley had to hit a stink face. And because who's expecting that shit to go down? But also, the way some of these blocks set up, they were just dominating. It paid dividends for them to go out in the offseason and get all of these new offensive linemen. Because, man, in this one especially, they were just run blocking their asses off. Whether it was them getting the inside push to just move people far away from either one of those running backs. And on one specific play, this was the case. They got the inside push as Monangai was trying to run that way, looking for a cutback lane in the process. And DJ Moore also, they didn't talk about on this play, gets enough of a distraction on Jalen Phillips to just distract him, keep him frozen up for just enough time to let Monangai run straight through, and that led to a huge gain. Like, these rushing lanes, with the physicality that they were implementing, were wide open. And they kept on exploiting that. I mean, even with some of the outside runs. For Luther Burden III, they started running a few sweeps for him, and you have Jalen Carter getting caught up in that. Jalen Carter's a great defensive tackle, but he's not catching up with him. And it's interesting to see, too, because, honestly, the broadcast team was right. They appear to have been using Kyle Monangai for more inside runs to make the most of his blend of power. Even with him having a compact frame, you saw it at Rutgers last season. Man, he packs a fucking punch. I've repeatedly said that. And it's faring quite well for him in the league right now. Meanwhile, they've been trying to get Swift out in space a little more. And they think that's where he operates the best. And to be honest, a lot of runs he was able to bounce outside, make people miss, and pick up extra yardage that way. That didn't stop him from getting a few gaping holes up the middle to run through and just start cutting up through the defense, making them look silly. So that was the main advantage there. Also, too, for the Bears, especially in the first half, they were 7 of 10 on third down. 7 of 10. Now, granted, they were stopped on a 4th and short to start out their game. But they were so fucking efficient on third down. And it put the Eagles in a weird predicament. Like, this game could have been so much worse. It could have been so much worse for Philly when you think about it. I mean, this touchdown run by DeAndre Swift happened to be on a third down, for instance. And it just continued as the game went on. Like, only where Caleb Williams was pressured just enough by Jalen Phillips did he start throwing some incomplete passes. And that would lead to one of their first failed third down conversions of the entire half. It was crazy. Like, the Bears had clearly established momentum on the ground. They had 83 rushing yards in the first quarter, for example, which is the most that the Eagles had allowed since 2022 in the first quarter. And they were that damn good on third down. Feel like they should have had more points on the board. Only, this is where context comes in. Because to the Eagles' defense's credit, I mean, it's like, when you're out on the field that much, eventually you're bound to start breaking as a unit. And for their offense's sake, we'll get to that. They didn't, honestly. They kept hanging in there. They kept capitalizing on opportunities to force pressure on Caleb Williams at points. And were occasionally able to force them to play behind schedule, leading to a few timely stops there. On the other hand, Caleb Williams had a mostly clean pocket throughout the game, another sign of just how much better this offensive line has gotten. And between just some inaccurate reads and also really good point about footwork, especially on the pass to Roma Dunze that was left just completely short in the Eagles' red zone. He's trying to throw that off balance, and it just completely looks like an underwhelming pass. If you literally just stay on your feet and keep control of how your stance is, you're probably going to complete that pass more often than not, and that adds even more points to the board for the Bears. The Eagles would have to take that, I guess. But at that point, I mean, Eagles defense played fine. They did. Yes, the numbers on the ground especially will not tell you that. Especially considering they gave up 132 rushing yards 142 rushing yards in the first half, which is their most since 2015 as well. It wasn't pretty. And granted, with the conditions of wind, like, you had to figure that would be the case. But, I mean, still, a defense can only do so much for so long. And to be honest, things would get a little bit interesting. But still, even with the Eagles getting their touchdown, and I'll get to their side in a second, you still had Jake Elliott fail to tie up the ball game and missing the fucking PAT. Maybe that's due to the wind as well, but just chance after chance after chance consistently missed to build off and compound off of a performance in where even if the run wasn't necessarily stopped, the passing game, at best for the Bears, was somewhat cardiac. And, natural conditions may play a bit of a factor in this. But you still have to credit the Eagles defense for holding Caleb Williams to less than 50% completion yet again and yet again because of the contributions elsewhere. He gets away with it. Bears defense was no slouch either. I mean, they force Jalen Hurts on this play, for example. They get him in a spot where he's already behind schedule and he's being pressured completely by a wave of different a wave of different Bears defenders. Then out in space, he tries to extend the play, make something happen downfield, while Kyler Gordon's guarding Devontae Smith in this situation, and he's locking his ass up. He's locking him up the whole way. He's going with, this actually might have been A.J. Brown. Nevertheless, he was going with him stride for stride, trying to adjust on his front, and it would be matched every single time. Eventually, Jalen Hurts is now in a spot where he has to force it up, and little did he know that Kevin Byard III would hawk down the fucking football and pick it off to give the Bears a nice shot at potentially taking a much bigger lead. But even then, it was always something. And that's where the Eagles play a factor in this. Oh, man. So, their offense. Because when it came to passing for them, even though there were some rough points, because of how things were at the same time, compared to what the Bears were doing, especially when you consider how A.J. Brown performed in the game, he played fine. He played very fine. He was getting open, and he definitely got his fair share of contributions in this one. But elsewhere, it was chaotic, and this is something that they've been continuing to struggle with all year. Unlike the Bears, they, for the majority of this game, aside from, I guess, a few garbage time sequences on that late drive that they scored on, they were horrible on third down. Horrible. Something like 1 of 8 at that point. And even in cases where it felt like they had chances, because they had a ton of them, and they did not convert at all. For you, throughout the entire first half, to have just one field goal drive, and then you go on 3 different punts, especially including 2 3-and-outs, just letting the Bears eat up the ball control in this game. They had a massive advantage in time of possession. And if you're the Eagles, all you had to do at that point was be as demoralized as other teams would manage to be in that situation. Because this, if we're not mistaken, unless we missed something, should be the Eagles' game plan, right? This is what they would traditionally be doing last season. Establishing ball control and dominance in the rushing attack early to make teams submit. And even in situations where the game might have felt close for a little bit of time, it never felt that way, with the rushing attack being the core focus of this team. Well, now it's like, okay, we've kind of lost things a little bit. They are still trying to run the football, but granted, they've continued to bring up the fact that less Jalen Hurts design runs have gotten this team all out of sorts. With that being the case, more attention is naturally going to be focused on Saquon Barkley as they try to slow him down and keep bodies in front of him. Like, even these defensive coordinators, they literally show the entire kind of a few conversations, at least, that different broadcasters and reporters had leading up to the game to get different quotes from different members of the team. Even Dennis Allen was quoted as saying that anytime he touches a football, Saquon Barkley, he's a threat to go all the way. Like, that is still very much the case. He is certainly one of the more explosive running backs in the NFL. But if you're looking at his graphics this season, like, it is a far cry from what it was last year. And that could be a part of it. Could also be a part of the offensive system. But even then, you have to understand that this is yet another time in Jalen Hurts' career where he has a different offensive coordinator. And as great as last season was, you know, I guess it was going to be difficult in that case to keep Kellen Moore. Maybe that's what comes with the territory of having such a well-run system. But constantly letting coordinator after coordinator walk out the door in hopes that you'll be able to replicate a similar type of offense, it's just hard to assume that that'll be the case so naturally. That's not how it works. And whatever you want to blame it on, the Eagles are definitely looking a little vulnerable at this point, admittedly. But they were still in this game. They were still in this game because of how great their defensive play was on the back end, and at least on some pass rushing opportunities up front. But it doesn't help that you constantly just fuck yourself over. Now, they did get a great touchdown score right here following the initial interception that I touched on, because A.J. Brown is truly a great wide receiver. And while Nashawn Wright this season, we'll get to it in a second, has managed to force the most turnovers in the NFL this year somehow. Like, he's having a great season after being a player who had kind of, I'm not going to say wasted away in Dallas, but he had not been used to the same extent. And in a year where they've had to, the Bears at least, rely on somebody to step up with the amount of injuries that they've had to both Jalen Johnson, who was actually back in this game, and man, they are glad to have him back, but Tyreek Stevenson had also been out for a tremendous period of time. They needed some consistency at that position, also with Kyler Gordon being out. And they seem to have got it with Nashawn Wright. So you have to credit him for stepping up out of a potential reserve role and doing a damn great job at what the Bears are asking him to do, going above and beyond to be that kind of player for them right now. Definitely has helped them a ton on this stretch. The thing is, I don't know if Nashawn Wright can still be considered good enough to really hang with the best of the best wide receivers in the league. And clearly it felt as though the Eagles at points, if they got the matchup, they were willing to exploit that. So, naturally, for a go ball, Jalen Hurts just decides on this first down, hey, he's going to just trust his guy here. And what do you know? A.J. Brown completely boxes out and bullies fucking Nashawn Wright. The entire time, Nashawn Wright's caught out of position as he tries to jump the route early. But A.J. Brown still got out in front of the football and would be in the end zone for a 33-yard touchdown catch. But again, like I mentioned, you missed the fucking PAT. And you get some good work in because the Bears had gotten a solid return. They were doing a little bit. But at points, it felt like the Bears just tried to put the ball in the hands of Caleb Williams a little too much. It felt kind of forced at points because you were establishing that kind of work on the ground game, but you aren't sticking with it. Like, they had just picked up a 9-yard gain previously. Now, yeah, the Eagles are starting to account for it just a little bit better, but it's like, if it had been working for you that well, why exactly do you feel the need to get away from that at this point? I'm not sure. And that would promptly lead to Caleb Williams. Honestly, this is a better play from Jalix Hunt, but putting the ball up in the air, it forced Hunt to get his hands up, bat it up, and he would intercept Caleb Williams. It looked like they were in smooth sailing. Very smooth. And yet, despite that, despite having positioning inside the Bears' territory, like this could have been a great drive for the Eagles to give themselves an advantage here. Would have been great for momentum. Instead, on their bread and butter play, because Saquon Barkley had gotten a couple of decent runs here, they were going to run the tush push on third and short, because of course they were. Only they didn't blow the play dead, even though Jalen Hurts had picked it up, and Nahshon Wright came right in from the side, ripped that ball clean out of his grasp, and got his own fumble recovery to give the Bears the ball right back, promptly leading to a drive that took 6 minutes off the clock, had Kyle Monangai go fucking stupid in the ground game, including a fucking 31-yard run to start off the drive. And they picked up countless crucial downs. Even if they missed the third down, they got a fourth down gain that just made this even worse, drove it into the fourth quarter, and before you knew it, Kyle Monangai was in the end zone himself from 4 yards out for a score. Like, that entire sequence right there might have been at least another step closer to defeat. But this entire thing would just be the straw that broke the camel's back. Let's just say that. I mean, bro. Like, you have a chance still at this point to make this game even. And you go 3 and out unsavourably at this point for the Eagles fans who are just booing all over the place. I can't blame them, right? And the Bears just continue to run and run and run the football, grind down time off the clock, and also just continue to impose their will. Like, the rushing attack was not being stopped by this front seven. They could only hope to contain it. And in cases where they did, they got so sold on the run. On this particular play from Caleb Williams, he just throws up fucking literally a layup at that point. Like, I don't know. You have everybody so far in the box for the Eagles, and Reed Blankenship gets caught right in the middle as Kmet is running vertically over top of him, and Caleb Williams just gets the softest lob imaginable over to Cole Kmet off of a routine play-action play. Granted, you had been doing tons of inside zone action. They must have thought that was coming, to be honest, at that point. Even then, who's to say they would have stopped that, right? But you gotta try. And it left them wide open over the top for a 28-yard touchdown catch. That moment right there would honestly end the game. Now, the Eagles, out of vanity, did try to make things interesting, did try to stat pad on the scoreboard, and would get A.J. Brown in for a 4-yard touchdown catch, but would also miss a 2-point conversion. You know, even with the Bears turning it over on downs, and even with the Eagles getting the ball back, that still wouldn't be fortuitous enough for them. I mean, they did get down the field. They tried to make this a one-possession ball game in hopes of doing that and also getting an onside kick, which is already difficult and highly unlikely. And that still wouldn't even come to fruition because Jake Elliott would miss a field goal, giving the Bears the 24-15 victory in what would mark their first winning season since 2018. We all know how that fittingly ended for them against this very Eagles team, though. So try that on for size, right? But no, seriously. When you look at it from the Eagles' perspective overall, before I even get into the numbers for either side, like it's been alluded to several times at this point. I mean, Jalen Hurts again did say this. He said this himself in talking about the fact that they have to stick to one core identity because they are just all over the place. Now, you know, if they're trying to be a rushing team, well, that has been difficult, especially with Saquon Barkley being stuffed consistently and having just 2 explosive runs of 20 plus yards compared to 17 last season. Drastic difference there. And again, the lack of really desiring to have Jalen Hurts be involved in that at all. And while they have tried that over the past few games now between the Cowboys, of course, a few days back, and then the Bears, maybe they are trying to do that. But it feels reactionary. It feels like they're hearing a ton of different noises around them. And I think other broadcasters have brought that up too. Because if you were truly intent on having Jalen Hurts be a runner, you would have implemented this from the very first game. You wouldn't be trying to work this into the system as we are now 13 weeks into the year at this point. And as of the recording of this video, like, why wait all the way until now to start having Jalen Hurts run the football if this wasn't what you were trying to do? And then you also have the passing component, which has been fluctuating, to say the least, this season. Like, it constantly is like a roller coaster at this point. Not really reaching too many highs outside of a few Jalen Hurts games in a row. And the fact that he has at least protected the football in that aspect. But, you know, for him to have just 2 interceptions on the year now, like, that could be cool, but also misleading in a little bit of a way. And it feels like you could get even more results out of that, and they fail to do so. It's like there's too much. There's just way too much going on. It's like A.J. Brown. It's crazy because you see him getting his numbers in, and it did not come in a winning effort. But I also recently watched a video from a different YouTuber, and KJ Speaks, talking about a lot of different stuff in A.J. Brown's background. Now, I was familiar with one particular case of deep depression and thoughts of ending it all. I did hear that from A.J. Brown before. I was very familiar with that component of it. Essentially, he poses that a lot of this talk from A.J. Brown is really about a matter of respect and a desire to win and truly be a factor in winning. Not solely like ego or anything of that sort. And when you look at it that way, now it does kind of change up the narrative a little bit. But man, like, even if that may be the case, it's like a situation like this and having this go down on Black Friday does not make things too much better in that aspect. It's like you are trying, if you are Kevin Patullo, because maybe he's hearing this as well, and it's like you are trying to appease somebody somewhere. Like, at the end of the day, you know, you probably do want to see more consistency from both of the perimeter guys. I think that is fair, as A.J. Brown himself said as well. Like, that's honest. That's good. You know, you don't want him to constantly just be to the wayside and not really contributing to anything, especially with how talented he is. That's understandable. But you also have to understand that when you are calling any offense, honestly, and honestly as an OC, he should understand this. There's going to be some give and take. You cannot please everybody. You can't. He's so stuck in trying to cater to one specific aspect that you are just leaving another one out to dry. Like, the Eagles, even if their passing numbers last season did not line up that well with the amount of times they favored rushing the football, there was still a lot more balance. A lot more balance in that offense. And that's the key with the Eagles in general. Like, even other offensive coordinators, like Shane Steichen was there, and he figured this out as well, that, you know, they would favor the passing attack more when he was there. But there was still much better balance in that system. And what do you know? They were runner-ups. They get elite balance from Kellen Moore as the OC, and they win the Super Bowl. And now you're just all over the place with Kevin Patullo. You are actively downgrading. And there were questions around what he could do anyways. It has been chaotic. But I don't know. I guess in his case, you could say there's a little bit of pressure that comes with the territory, especially with the Eagles knowing that more likely than not, you were going to lose Kellen Moore in the offseason to a head coaching job. He had been waiting for one for a while. Fair enough. You're asking a first-time guy in Patullo to assume the role of a Super Bowl champion's offense. It's definitely still interesting to this point. And while there have been some flashes, it is not what it was. Maybe it doesn't need to be, but it's not looking great for them right now. So they have to figure it out. At the very least, they are still ahead in the NFC East, but if they keep on slipping like this, the Cowboys are certainly catching up. Like, you worked that hard to get out to that lead, and you cannot really afford to lose it, I would say. But as for the numbers, I mean, passing-wise for the Bears, again, Caleb Williams completed less than 50% of his passes. In fact, he completed just 47.2% of his passes for 154 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. That is not a great game from him at all. Not really. But when you look at the rushing numbers, not only did the team as a whole have 281 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground while averaging 6 yards a pop, but both Monangai and Swift had over 125 rushing yards in this game. Colin Monangai had 130 on the dot and a touchdown, and Swift had 125 on the dot and a touchdown. Like, insane work from those two. Now, I don't know if it's going to be that consistent all the time, but there is definitely something you can work with there. If they're both making that shit happen at one time, that is crazy. As for the Eagles, 230 passing yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception for Jalen Hurts on 55.9% completion as well. Again, fair enough. You're not going to be as accurate with that much wind blowing in your face and all around you. I understand. But even then, there were just routine plays like they would get you. Like, for instance, they actually managed to get a good alternative to the RPO route that they usually get for Dallas Goedert. And that was covered up by Kevin Byard, but over the top, they actually managed to get Devontae Smith as he skated past Jalen Johnson while stumbling a little bit. and picked up a nice gain that way. Yet still, they couldn't do anything on that drive. Really, it was always something. They did run for 5.1 yards per carry, but 17 carries for an Eagles team now that has the kind of talent that they do, even if the offensive line has definitely faced a little bit of regression. It wows a lot of different people. A.J. Brown will have 10 receptions for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Devontae Smith would have 5 receptions for 48 yards. Reed Blankenship and Nakobe Dean both had over 12 tackles in this game as well. And that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.